Let's talk about an inch bag. Now, this takes packing emergency preparedness gear to a whole different level. Now, it's hard for me to believe that the traditional inch bag is that you're going out into the woods and you're planning to basically permanently live there. And I think that would be a huge challenge, as we saw in the reality show Alone. But I can envision where you have a 2-mile front of forest fire coming at you, and you grab your document bag, you grab your any medications that you might need, and you grab a couple credit cards, get in your car, and you're gone. Now, you may be coming back, but it's not going to be the same because your place is going to be burnt out. But let's entertain the scenario that, for whatever reasons, perhaps you're being pressured by some sort of marauders to evacuate your homestead, your prepper cabin, or you've depleted the natural resources there, the wildlife, and you're forced to relocate. What would you take? Now, one key item there is just the transportation logistics. Are you going to be able to fill up a truck or an SUV? Are you going to have some sort of cart that you can carry things in? Or is it your feet or your wheels? You have to rucksack out whatever you're taking out. Now, one of the key delineators of having an inch bag, I think, is having a compact but robust and powerful tool submodule. So let's talk about that first. Now, what's the number one thing I would take along? Well, a knife, a survivor knife. And this would be my choice. This is a cold steel Bushman. The blade on it is razor sharp. The point, once again, razor sharp. Feels like very fine steel. So I personally think this would be excellent to use for skinning deer or a bear or fish. Also, you could use it as a traditional knife and manufacture other type tools out of wood and so on. But one really delineating point to the Bushmaster cold steel is it has a hollow handle. So you take a walking stick and you jam it in there, and now you have the queen of the battlefield, at least in the Middle Ages and before. You have a spear. And that could be very helpful in defense against wild animals, or if you are forced to use just primitive tools. So my first choice would be the Bushman. Now, sometimes you might find that you need a very small knife for fine whittling. So within the saber for that, I just have a little like case knife with a smaller blade. So we'll put that in there. The next thing I would take besides a knife is a silky big boy. This is it's a chainsaw, manual chainsaw, and you just fold it out and you just saw away, and it is incredible. Like I say, it's like a chainsaw, it's just you or the motor. So I highly recommend these silky big boys. And also by sawing down any leaves or logs that you need and so on, it's actually from a calorie standpoint and energy standpoint, it's usually going to be far more economical than if you're using an axe. Interesting enough, the next thing that I would have is a shovel, and this is an old school army shovel, and these are just excellent. And of course you can use it as a shovel. You can fold these down, and then you bring this up, and you can use it as a hoe. And then a sort of off prescription uses of these is you can actually use it as a camp chair. You just stick it under your butt and you sit down on it, and you have a camp stool. And the other thing that you can do that's kind of off prescription on this is you get it on one side, and you have an outdoor Johnny there for you to take care of your business, and you don't have to quite squat down. You fold it down, and it fits in a case like these. Now, these are actually getting to be quite hard to find, but you can still find them in Army Navy surplus stores. Now, this would be my first choice. It's just the metal is super quality, the handle's quality, its strength. This thing has lasted for decades. But recently I did pick up a modern Army shovel, and I was impressed with it. You can do similar things. You can take it and tighten this up, use it as a shovel. You can turn it on its side, use it as a hoe, and then it will fold out. You fold it up, and then they have a nice little pocket pouch that you can put it in. So, and it's much lighter than the traditional Army shovel. I will admit, I'm old school. If I'm rucksacking this out, I would, despite the fact that it weighs quite heavy, I'd take the traditional shovel. If I had the ability to take 2 shovels, I'd take both of them. The next thing that I would take is a pick, which might seem like a sort of unusual tool to take, but I'm envisioning that you might need to build a shelter where half of it is underground. You might have to build a foxhole. And so this is a pick, and it's got a broad blade here and a spike here, and it's just awesome when you get this thing to working. And you just, comes back into 2 pieces. You insert it in here, over there. This comes down, and goes in here. So very compact. Another thing you might need is, I do have a Leatherman wave, but and it would be excellent to take it, but this is just a traditional Swift Army knife with many different blades and features. Now, another thing that with the inch bag that would differentiate things is you need some tools where you can get some food. So one of the things that I have in mind is I have some, I think, professional quality snares. And it comes with a booklet called Snares and Snaring by Raymond Thompson. And the catalog for this is the Fleming Company. And they just have every trap imaginable that you can think. The second item I would have for producing food is a compact fishing kit. So I've got hooks and lures and things like that in here, floaters. There's some extra fishing line. I also have a survival fishing gill net, which I've never used. I suspect in most states it's illegal, so you would certainly have to wait until without rule of law for this. You can buy these, they sell them, these fishing nets for decorative things, but like I say, if you were in a survival situation where without rule of law, you know, you could use as a fishing gear. Another item is, this is a Wrist Rocket Falcon 2 tournament class, and it is just an awesome tool. I mean, I sort of bought it on a lark, but when I took it out to test it, it was amazing. You have like rifle quality accuracy with this. And what I have for use for ammunition is you can get these like little marbles, and they also sell you steel balls, and if you're in a pinch, you could just find you some rocks. But it's incredible how accurate that is. You know, it may just be me that I have some good eye-hand coordination, but in talking to another fella, he was really impressed with it too. So this Rich Rocket Falcon 2, can't speak highly of it, more highly of it than I have. It's just excellent. Another thing that I have is I do have a traditional bow. There's a lot of logic. Someone that's really into archery might tell me they could find a better thing. But the reason why I went with a traditional recurve bow instead of a crossbow is simple. I just can't imagine too much going wrong with this. Now, I'm sure with years and years of use, or if you abused it, you could find probably a way to break it. But I think it's simple, maintenance is simple, and I think that would be very useful. With just a couple days of practice, you can become really efficient with it and accurate. This is a 50-pound bow. I use, and the maker of that, by the way, is Bear Grizzly. I use fibercarbon arrows, and these are expensive, and it's easy to lose them, believe it or not. I've spent hours looking for them. So I always carry it in this kind of leg holster, keep them separated, keep them from damaging each other. And when I put them up for permanent care, I use a arrow case. And the ones I'm using, you can easily get 8 to 12 arrows in there. Likewise with the bow, it's you know, all of this stuff costs money, so you know, make sure you have a proper storage case that's padded to keep any damage down. And then certainly a bow could be used as a weapon if in the highly unlikely scenario I needed to resort to primitive weapons. I do have more than the bow. This is something years ago I was actually into going to mountain man rendezvous, and this is something I picked up there. This is a Damascus steel, maybe Bowie knife, certainly a buffalo knife, full tang, so it runs all the way down. Very nice tight fit. Excellent blade guard or hand guard, which I think is essential. And I think with this, well, I think just the black bears in my neighborhood, just looking at me without a weapon, they are instantly shy and run from me. But if you had a toad sticker like this, I think they would be extremely shy. And in the highly unlikely event that you had to go to a night fight, you know, when you pull one of these out, that would put the fear in most men. You should carry the axe in your right hand and your Bowie knife in the left. Another way to do it, especially if you don't have the strength to have traumatic blows with the axe, just hold it in your right hand and use this as a hooking tool. So there are 3 primitive tools, plus a 4th being the slingshot, that increase your capabilities. Now there are some other things. One would be, you do need probably an axe. And this is a cold steel Rifleman Hawk. Just excellent steel, excellent blade. Has a tool end here. The handle just has the feel of strength. Just extremely well put together. I've always had great results and been really pleased with Cold Steel products. Now there's a few other peripheral things you might want. One would be a ferro rod for fire starting. You need a metal cup to cook in. You're going to need, and I've kind of done overkill here, I got 3 different knife sharpeners or blade sharpeners. Also for that purpose, a file. And then for various things, I always found when you start working with these tools that like a wire cutter can be helpful. On cordage, this is rope that could be helpful, like if you have to hoist a deer up in the air to field dress it. And here's some cordage. And then, well, I realize it's not replenishable. When I go camping, I find that having some candles with you are tremendously helpful. So here's some tea candles. And then here's a much larger candle. They're good for in the wintertime. If you put a candle like this in a small tent, and of course you have to be very, very careful about not falling asleep with them going, but they'll actually raise the temperature of a small tent significantly. And then also if you need to carry fire somewhere or even to build a fire. So those are the essential tools that I would have in an inch bag. The next module that you're going to need in your inch bag is upgrading and having professional class camping gear. Now, and that's what I have in this bag, and also this is the pack that I would use for the inch bag. Now, in a previous video, I've covered what I call my 72-hour kit, which has actually got food for 5 days. That's this bag here. So in a real fully loaded inch bag, I would take out the food, the extra set of clothing in here, the cooking gear, the sandals, and I will put them in this bag. So if you want to see what all is in my 72-hour bug out bag, go to the video for that and you'll see the contents of this bag. Also, you're going to, for your clothes, as I show in the 72-hour bug out bag video, this is going to be the technical clothes that I actually am wearing. The inch tools that we've already seen fit into this Army mechanics bag, tool bag, with the exception of the shovel. And when I get all done here, I may have to retrace my words and take the lighter modern Army shovel. But what do we have to upgrade the camping equipment? Well, one thing that we're going to need is to step up to a better cooking pot. So that's what this bag here, this is Optimus Terra, and it's got a full size container in here with a lid. It has a little smaller one inside, cooking pan. So we've got that for cooking. We're going to want a small sleeping bag. Let me come back to that. Pair of leather gloves. This is from Brigade Quartermasters, and it's a Smug Pack sleeping bag liner. Let me come back to that. This is a British Army tarp, and I'll explain how that's used in a minute. The traditional American Army poncho. We've got a much larger sleeping bag. We have a biddy tent. This is a fold-up Army sleeping pad from the German Army, and this is a pocket shower, 10 liters, sea to summit. I'll explain that in just a second. So with that, emptied the monster pack. You can see how large it is. And this will be heavy when it's fully loaded. I've taken this on many a winter camp out. And yes, when you get this all loaded up, and you've got the tool bag, and you've got a rifle with you, you're going to look like one of them special forces people going out on a mission in Afghanistan. And no, you know, I'm not quite, I'm beyond my prime, so having done this, I know how it works. You have to be in reasonably good shape. You need to be able to walk a mile, walk 3 miles. And when you load this truck up, fully loaded, at my age, you walk a 1/4 of a mile, you take a long rest. You walk a 1/2 mile, you take a long rest. You walk another 1/2 mile, take a long rest. And now you're clipping it at mile increments. And try to make the first day short. Plan on taking some ibuprofen for pain. But you can do it. Just do it in intervals. You have to time yourself and space it. Now, the bivy tent here is fully enclosed. It's held up by tension, and it's just it keeps the bugs away, the snakes away. In and of itself, it can keep the rain away. And then if you take your tarp, you put up your tent, you put your tarp on top of the tent, but not touching it. You can have a real cloud buster as far as rain. The tarp catches the rain, runs it off, and your your tent is fully dry. So that's a good system for sheltering. The sleeping pad, it folds up like this and unfolds. I won't take it all the way. But these are extremely hard to find. I don't know how you would do it, but it says Strom, S-T-U-R-M, made in Germany. But I understand the German Army uses these. And actually, I bought about 3 of these. I've never seen them again in any other Army store. They're just great because it folds up so flat and everything. The U.S. Army has something, a very similar material that rolls up. And so if you can't find this on the internet, you could just use the U.S. Army sleeping pad. And there's commercial versions of that too. On the sleeping bag, this is you can see the size of this. It's in a Sea to Summit bag to keep it dry. And this will go down to about 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty good for 4 seasons. This smaller one would go down to probably 20, 25 degrees. So it's great for the summer. Might be okay for the fall and the spring. But here's how you do the double whammy in the dead of winter. You take the larger bag, you take this, you put it inside. So now you have 2 layers. And then the advantage of the Smug Pack liner is, I remember on one occasion I was using this bag, and in the process of putting it in a tent, it got a little wet. So I just slipped this inside this sleeping bag, and I was dry even though the bag was a little wet. So very handy. I think also you could take the small bag, put it in the big bag, and you could take this and insert it in the smaller bag. And then you would have something that could go to an extremely low temperature. This is an Army poncho. I include this because there is just a multitude of purposes for an Army poncho. You can use it as a shelter by itself. You could use it as the tarp. You can use it as a litter to carry out a wounded person. You can put it over you to keep you dry as a poncho. You can roll up into it as a blanket, and it'll help you quite a bit. So very vital to have. A pair of leather gloves is going to be very helpful if you're out in the woods and doing all sorts of work with the briars and so on. And then School of Hard Knocks. I went up to Canada one time and did some hiking, and it was really a little too chilly and the water looked yucky, and so I didn't want to bathe in the water. Although after running it through the Sawyer filter, I had to drink it. But anyway, but after 3 or 4 days of hard hiking, you don't smell very well. And it gets to the point where even you notice it on yourself. So this is a Sea to Summit pocket shower. You fill it up, you hang it up. You can let the sun, warm it up some, and then you use it as a shower, and it can be very helpful. So those are the essential camping equipment for your inch bag. Once you have loaded this, I should have showed you before I got started, but you have a big pocket here, you have another big pocket here. The big part of the top is still empty. You would want to take your equipment from the 72 kit and cross-deck it, or rucksack it into this sack, and it would be full. You would be pressing it in there, but you can get it in there. Okay, what about a modern firearms module for your inch bag? Well, this is what my wife would be carrying. This is a Ruger 10-22. Comes with clips that have 25 rounds of 22 long rifle. Take that out, put the receiver down, push up there, and it breaks apart like that. So it's very compact, very light. That's what the wife prefers. Now for myself, I would certainly want to look at the actual circumstances, but just to make a generic statement, I don't think I would go tactical. I think I would carry this. And this is a Browning civilian BAR. It only has 4 rounds, but they're 30-06. And I know from personal experience that the 30-06, if you hit a deer, it's lights out for them. And I suspect I would never want to harm my bears that I so dearly care for in around my property. But I guess if it's you're going to go hungry, I think it would have the same effect on one of them. And this is, even though the gun itself is was bought in the late 60s, so it's old, but it's still fully functional. The sight on it, I did replace in about 2010. I took the whole gun set down to an old Marine that was a gunsmith, and I asked him, I said, the scope that's currently on it was from the late 60s. With all the computerization and so on, do they have better scopes now that will be inherently better? And he said, oh, absolutely. So he sold me this scope, and looking at this compared to my old scope from the 60s, it was, you had to believe in the emperor's clothing, if you will. I didn't see too much difference. But boy, was he right. When I took this to the range, it's incredible with this optics on it. And at 100 yards, when I went to sight it in, the quarter size area of the bullseye, I mean a quarter like a coin, 3 shots went right into that, and then 1 barely broke the curve of it. And I thought, I think I've sighted the gun in. So I've used it since then, and it's just, it's that sort of accuracy with this Browning BAR 30-06 with a modern scope on it. So I feel pretty comfortable if you're out in the middle of nowhere trying to get by. This would give you a lot of protection, a lot of hunting power, and if it was not a bunch of marauders around, this is what I'd use. So be prepared.